On average, how long do people last as social workers in Britain? The answer, 6 years. 6 years before a job that involves sifting through the wreckage of some of our country's most deeply troubled parents and children becomes too much. 1 in 5 of all social worker posts are currently unfilled. If that's not a crisis for the Cinderella service of the welfare state, I'm not sure what is. And in the last week, things went from bad to worse. There were reports of social workers being spat at in the street. It followed 2 hideous child murder cases in as many weeks. Bradford Crown Court heard how 16-month-old Star Hobson was killed by her mother's girlfriend, and the case of 6-year-old Arthur Labinjo-Hughes, which saw his stepmother convicted of murder. In both cases, social services missed chances to take the children into care, with COVID and lockdown also playing a significant part. Let's turn to the former Children's Minister, Tim Loughton, to ponder on some of these difficult questions. Tim Loughton, appreciate your time this evening. Thank you very much indeed. As ever, it's so easy to denigrate the work of social workers, but it's an incredibly difficult balance they need to strike. When to remove a child from the care of their natural parents or the family home, and when to leave them.
Yes, and it's the judgment of Solomon in many cases. And as we've seen in these 2 really horrible murders in the last couple of weeks, they're dealing with very clever, very plausible parents who put on an act to say, the child has fallen over, bruised, there's nothing to see here. And it's really difficult then as to how you investigate under the surface. You need to get into that home. You need to look the carers in the eye. You need to take the child, if they're old enough, on one side and interview them. You need to look around the house. You need to look in the fridge to see if the child is being fed properly. That was the case with Arthur Labinjo-Hughes, where he's being effectively starved to death as well. It's a really difficult job that we expect social workers to do. And I think we need to ask ourselves also, there will be individual failings that have happened. That happens all over the place. But how did the system conspire to allow these 2 horrible deaths to happen? And those are the questions that we need to be answering in the serious case reviews which follow the prosecutions of these terrible, terrible monsters who've led to the deaths of 2 innocent children.
I think you give us some clues in what you say there, actually, Tim Loughton, that idea that actually you need to be able to bring your experience to bear, to bring some scepticism to bear on people who are, as you explain, very accomplished at telling lies to keep themselves out of trouble. And that takes experience. That takes years of doing the job. And if the average social worker's only in the job for 6 years, you can see how they never get it.
And that's part of the problem. So many years ago, when I was Children's Minister, we tried to overhaul the whole of the safeguarding social worker system, because when I became Children's Minister in 2010, a survey showed that social workers were spending something like 80% of their time in front of computer screens, filling in bureaucratic forms and processes. And you need to be eyeballing the people you're there to protect. You need to be going to homes and, as I say, snooping around to find out exactly what's going on. Sitting in front of the computer is never going to do that. Social workers had a rule book that ran to, I think, 750 pages. So they're spending all of their time looking over their shoulders to make sure they've complied with Rule 4.2 on page 67. That is no way to run a profession like this. We need well-trained, well-motivated social workers who use their professionalism, use their expertise, use their training, and use their nous to be able to make a very difficult judgment call, the judgment of Solomon, as I said at the beginning. And the only way you can do that is to allow them to get on with their job. And I said to social workers, I want to give social workers the confidence to make a mistake. Hopefully not often, but it's a mistake made on using their professional judgment and actually going in and trying to see what was going on, rather than just looking at the guidebooks and computers. And I fear we will probably see in this case that those social workers were not given enough time, if they were experienced enough, actually to go in and make those sorts of judgments. And when you've got social workers who are constantly turning over, where you've got a different social worker on the same case turning up, you're not going to get that accumulation of knowledge to build up the picture, the difficult jigsaw to work out exactly what's going on behind that front door.
And that continuity of contact that you need as well, the
Yeah.
same social worker going to the same household. And obviously COVID has played a part here because, you know, society at large, what's the old cliche about it taking a village to raise a child? It can't just be the state that's involved here. These are failing families, but families actually can be part of the solution, that the wider family, the bigger family. And we know tragically in both these instances, there were other relatives who were flagging up problems to the authorities.
What's really depressing here is all of the issues that have come out in these two cases are frankly the same sort of problems that I was dealing with 10 years ago with Baby P, with Daniel Pelker, 20 years ago with Victoria Climbier. This isn't rocket science, I'm afraid, and it's not new. We had multiple warning signs raised by relations, grandparents in both these cases, raised by the police, raised by the school in the case of little Arthur, who was actually at school. And yet that information wasn't joined together. Somebody didn't take the ball and run with it and then ask those difficult questions until they got satisfactory answers, or intervene and take that child to a place of safety. And I fear that's the problem we still have. Although we're better at it, there are fewer of these sorts of deaths, but it's still calculated something like 28 children like this die at the hands of their carers or parents each year. And in the case of Arthur and of Star, they were tortured effectively by deeply, deeply malicious people who seem to get entertainment out of inflicting pain on their own children. I mean, it's an extraordinary thing to imagine.
Yeah, it's a really painful subject, but it's one that does need addressing and discussing, doesn't it? Tim Loughton, thanks so much for talking it through with us this evening. Thanks a lot.